Sometimes people don't see your worth until you're no longer by their side, and by the time they do, you've already passed away. Perhaps you are familiar with that sensation. To show someone your loyalty, patience, and understanding when things weren't easy. When things were unclear, you stayed. Even when they didn't realize it, you cared. You showed love in a way that required very little in return. However, they handled it as though it would never go away. As if you were always there. As if your generosity knew no bounds. As if your attendance at their event was just typical. Until one day, that is. Not very loudly. Not in a big way. It was just a peaceful moment when you realized there was just one side to the effort. And gradually, the person who had previously made such an effort to maintain the relationship started to back off. Perhaps you were that person because even the most patient heart eventually gets weary of waiting to be appreciated, and when that time comes, something within of you starts to change. You cease defending your value. You give up attempting to demonstrate your concern. You let go of someone who never really appreciated what they had. And that's typically the point at which everything shifts, because when you leave with a quiet dignity and your presence is no longer there to console them, the realization they never anticipated facing, begins to emerge in their minds. The awareness that the person who previously provided them with everything is no longer there, and sometimes this knowledge comes much too late. 1. The instant your absence materializes. When someone discovers your worth too late, the first thing that occurs is a moment they never anticipated experiencing, the realization of your departure. They are initially unaware of it. Life continues to go in the same manner as before. They carry on with their usual. The voids are filled with conversations with other people. When someone has been in your life for a long time, their presence becomes automatic, so distractions make things appear regular. They think you'll still be there to listen, just like the sun rises every morning. They anticipate that you will continue to care in the same manner as before. Regardless of how little attention they give it, they think the link will just go on. They don't immediately comprehend what's going on as you gradually take a step back. Perhaps they believe you're simply preoccupied. Perhaps they think you'll return like you did before. However, days go by. Then more time goes by. And a tiny bit starts to feel different. Your messages are no longer visible. They no longer hear your voice in their daily lives. The silent assistance they used to rely on gradually fades. It feels weird at first. After that, it becomes apparent. Because all of a sudden, the person who previously filled their lives with warmth is no longer there. The talks get shorter. You're missing the laughter they shared with you. Simple moments begin to feel a little hollow. At that point, they start to hear the realization in their heads. Not very loudly. It's only a silent idea that they find difficult to ignore. It no longer feels the same. They begin to recall how you used to be there for them. When no one else truly understood, how did you listen? How you maintained your composure when things got difficult. How, without them even realizing it, your presence made life seem a little lighter. However, those little things are no longer there. And for the first time, they start to comprehend what they had long ignored. Even when someone is there in front of them, some people fail to see their worth. When that presence gradually disappears from their surroundings, they become aware of it. When someone who previously freely given their heart ultimately decides to choose tranquility instead. At that point, the first emotion starts to develop within them. The impression that perhaps they didn't value you as much as they ought to have. 2. When recollections begin to speak louder than quiet. Then an unforeseen event starts to occur. They begin to revisit the memories they had previously dismissed. Initially, it occurs in brief moments. Not really dramatic. Just a little reminder that shows up out of the blue. Perhaps a music they hear brings back memories of a chat you had. Perhaps they go to a location where you two had a small moment together. And all of a sudden, it seems like your absence is more noticeable. Because when a person is gone, memories have an odd way of coming back. Things they used to take for granted start to come back to them. When they were having a rough day, you used to check on them. The tolerance you displayed when they were hard to understand. The little things you did that people hardly noticed at the time. Those things appeared commonplace at the time. They begin to feel uncommon now. They start to understand that not everyone provides that level of care. Not everyone pays attention the way you did. When things get complicated, not everyone remains. Not everyone invests their time and effort without continuously requesting something in return. And gradually, a silent query starts to take shape in their minds. How come I hadn't noticed this earlier? Because someone's perspective on the past changes when they discover your worth too late. Suddenly, seemingly ordinary moments take enormous significance. Your generosity starts to show in ways that it did not when you were there. Even though they weren't returning the favor, they recall the times you helped them. They recall how readily you overlooked little errors. Without requesting recognition, they recall the warmth you brought into their lives. At that point, the truth starts to gradually seep into their hearts. What they lost was not commonplace. It was a sincere caregiver. Someone who appeared. Someone who made an effort to create something authentic. However, the way those memories exist now is different. As fragments of a connection they can no longer readily reconnect to, rather than as moments they are still living. And one's realization becomes more apparent the more such memories resurface. Sometimes we don't realize someone's actual worth until they are no longer a part of our daily existence. And the majority of individuals never discuss this particular occasion. The point at which gratitude gradually gives way to regret, because memories by themselves are one thing, but when those memories start revealing the reality about how they treated you, something more profound starts to happen inside of them. They begin to notice things that they had previously disregarded. The effort you made to establish the connection. The tolerance you displayed at trying times. The way you made an effort to keep things together despite their gradual separation. They didn't quite get what you were providing back then. They believed that your generosity was merely a characteristic of who you were. They believed that you would always be loyal. No matter how preoccupied they were, they thought the bond would somehow last. But those presumptions start to crumble now that you're not standing next to them. Because people's worth might be subtly revealed in life through their absence. And remorse starts to grow at that point. Not very loudly. Seldom does regret come as a spectacular storm. It appears subtly at unexpected periods of contemplation and late-night thoughts. They start mentally reliving talks. There were times when you tried to say something significant and they dismissed it. There were moments when you needed their understanding, yet they opted for distance. Circumstances in which you were giving it your all while they were just paying half of your attention, and the more they consider it, the more obvious things became. You didn't ask for too much. All you wanted was to be respected. It can be a burdensome realization. Because there is no simple way to change the fact that someone lost a nice person due to their own lack of respect. They might begin to regret their response. I wish they had paid closer attention. I wish they had put out the same amount of effort that you were. However, the relationship has already shifted by the time those thoughts start to emerge. The individual who once made a great effort to stay in their lives has already started moving in a different path. And remorse has a terrible tendency to show up at that precise moment. The opportunity to change things may already be passing. 4. Eventually, a thought starts to form in their minds when they finally consider reaching out. For a long time, they avoided thinking about it. What happens if I try to get in touch? Because regret rarely remains silent for long once it begins to grow. They only watch your life from a distance at first. They note that you appear more at ease now. Your energy appears differently. How you're progressing without the continuous work you used to put into the relationship. And it can be unexpected to realize that. Because they always thought you would still be there in some way. They thought there would always be a small gap between you. However, things feel different now. You are no longer trying to get their attention. You're not repeatedly expressing how you feel. You're not attempting to correct something that was previously perceived as biased. Suddenly, they start to comprehend something they had never really thought about before. You didn't go because you lost interest. You left because you at last began to value your own tranquility. Their perspective on things is altered by this realization. They begin posing challenging inquiries to themselves for the first time. What if I had valued them sooner? What if I had exerted the same amount of effort as they? And slowly, another idea starts to emerge. Perhaps I ought to speak with them. Perhaps they consider conveying a message. They could think about giving you a call just to hear your voice once more. However, even that step suddenly seems difficult. Because doing so requires them to confront the truth of what they have lost. They have no idea how you'll react. Perhaps you've emotionally moved on already. Perhaps you've discovered a new tranquility that no longer involves them. And the situation is precarious because of that uncertainty. Because someone is no longer in the same position when they discover your worth too late. They now need to approach the individual they used to have easy access to with humility. Someone whose life might have progressed beyond the relationship they previously disregarded. And that's when things start to change. Because occasionally, after understanding your value, individuals attempt to return. However, by then, the person they lost has become stronger, wiser, and much less inclined to settle for less than what they deserve. 5. When it's too late. And many individuals don't realize this until it's too late. Some people don't realize how valuable you are until they experience your absence. Everything seemed normal to them when you were there. Your generosity seemed commonplace. It seemed expected that you would be patient. It seemed as though your loyalty would never fade. They were unaware of the rarity of what you were providing. Because silent love is often overlooked. The love that endures amid trying times. The love that overlooks minor errors. The love that perseveres in the face of apparent one-sidedness. They thought you would always be there while you were standing next to them. However, something inside of you shifted one day. Not because you lost interest, but rather because you at last grasped a crucial concept. Your heart was worthy of respect as well. As a result, you gave up on the relationship that had previously demanded all of your effort. You took a step back. You opted for tranquility rather than continual disappointment. At that point, the individual who had previously disregarded your value started to realize what they had lost. Because they were unprepared for the silence that resulted from your disappearance. The messages that were previously visible vanished. They no longer had the emotional support they needed. The warmth you subtly infused into their lives gradually vanished. And that's when it became clear. The knowledge that the person who had previously truly cared for them was no longer by their side. However, the narrative has already shifted by the time some people realize this fact. Because when someone takes too long to understand your worth, they frequently do so just as you've discovered it. And something significant occurs when you realize how valuable you are. Half-hearted effort is no longer acceptable. You cease justifying your deservingness of respect. You let go of those who never really valued the part you played in their lives. Rather, you advance with a subtle kind of might. The kind that no longer needs to prove anything. And sometimes that's the hardest thing a person can learn. Realizing that they lost a truly kind person because they failed to see that value when they had the opportunity. Thus, keep this in mind if you've ever left a situation where you felt ignored or undervalued. It will never be necessary for the proper people to lose you in order to recognize your value. While you are still standing next to them, they will be able to identify it. Take this message as a gentle reminder of something significant if it brought to memory something from your own life. It was never intended for your worth to be realized too late. From the start, it was intended to be respected. Tell me, do you sense it as well? I appreciate you finally remaining with me. For more videos that alter your perspective, please like, share, and subscribe to the channel. Because with your love and support, this channel will expand. Many thanks.